It's been one of the most anticipated new vehicle launches in recent memory, and finally it is here. The second generation Ford Ranger Raptor has touched down in Australia. You know the story here: more power, more performance, more tech and more luxury as well. We've already tested a prototype Ranger Raptor out in the elements. Now it's finally time to put the production version to the test, both off-road and on Australian roads as well. So much hype around this new vehicle. Let's see if it lives up to it. The Ranger Raptor has built a huge following in Australia since the first generation model launched in 2018. For Take 2, Ford is intent on evolving the nameplate, offering a more powerful engine package, adaptive Fox live dampers, improved handling, fresh styling, and a host of new cabin tech and safety. Pricing has climbed ever so slightly to $85,490 plus on-road costs, and Ford is already indicating a local wait time close to 10 months. The Aussie-developed Ranger Raptor features a 50mm longer wheelbase than before, but the 1700 and 10mm track widths are unchanged. The single biggest criticism of the first generation Ford Ranger Raptor was, of course, its 2-litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine, which was common with the entire Ranger lineup. For Ranger Raptor Take 2, Ford has made a massive step forward, now opting for a 3-litre twin-turbo V6 petrol engine. It's standalone within the Ranger lineup, and that's for good reason. While they were at it, they adapted a standalone power steering motor, so this has its own EPAS tune, anti-lag, active exhaust system, and of course those Fox live dampers. When you look at the engine bay, you notice it's missing an engine cover or a turtle shell on top. That's for good reason as well. Ford says a lot of this truck is form over function, and adding the turtle shell on top was needless, so they didn't worry about it. The active air vents in the bottom, they actually help cool down the engine. The vents in the guards as well, they're all there for real purpose and not just show. The shocks work with a familiar Raptor suspension setup of an aluminium double wishbone front end and live axle with coils and a Watts link at the rear. The box section frame has been toughened and reinforced compared to the standard Ranger. There's been so much emphasis on the performance enhancements to the second generation Ranger Raptor, but I think the thing that owners are really going to enjoy in terms of day-to-day amenity is the interior. It has been spruced up massively. The presentation is a clear step up, even from the really nicely done Ranger Wildtrak. Nice surface treatments at all the contact points, plenty of incidental storage, and a mix of hardwired switchgear and of course the new screen. So we have a 12-inch center touchscreen, the full 12.4-inch digital instrument cluster, and the touchscreen itself is fitted with Ford's latest Sync 4A software with wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, a wireless phone charger, and much more. The way that all of this tech integrates other features of the car is cleverly done as well. So you now have forward-facing, rear-facing, and an overhead camera. A lot of the off-road software is also really nicely incorporated into the center screen. And like I said before, there are shortcut buttons for a lot of different features. This actually feels warranted for the price. Finally, you're stepping into the Ranger Raptor, and there's a clear point of difference between this and every other Ranger model. The Raptor achieves those traits while offering great incidental storage and charging points. It covers our infotainment checklist as standard, with the exception of head-up display. Likewise, safety takes a significant step forward. Now, the business end of the Ford Ranger Raptor is all about incremental improvements. So for that reason, it has an identical 2.5-ton brake towing capacity and a payload capacity of 708 kilograms, which is down marginally on the predecessor. That's on account of its slightly heavier curb weight. When you look at the tray area, the most immediate thing missing is the steps as found on the Wildtrak and the common Ranger variants. That's because of these outbound exhausts. Ford wasn't able to integrate them, so they've just got a standard tray area. That said, this bumper itself is load rated, so you can stand on that. And there's also the tow hooks at the rear and the front as well. Very small but meaningful improvements. One of the things that really annoyed me about the previous generation Ranger Raptor, if you're a regular dirt bike rider like me, every time I pushed a steel ramp or aluminium ramp up to the tailgate, I was pushing it up against bare metal. You now have this plastic lip along the entire perimeter of the tray, and it prevents you from doing damage in little instances like that. The tray itself, it's now got the spray-in bed liner standard, 6 tie-down points, and of course, lighting on either side. All little handy inclusions. So, the high-speed off-road dirt stuff is coming, but the bigger question that remains with the Ford Ranger Raptor, and the one that's really been unanswered until now, is how it performs on everyday Australian roads. And as far as I'm concerned, the initial impression is that it is all good news. Ford has integrated all of those underbody changes to deliver a ute that feels better connected, that imparts more feeling and feedback with the key controls, and just generally feels more polished in a broader mix of conditions. So I'm talking about things like the electric power steering motor. This one has a unique one, separate to Ranger, and straight away, pulling out of the car part, you could just feel that it has a little bit more weighting, a little bit more feedback, both off and on center. So it feels that just that little bit more polished and kind of what you'd expect from a performance car, let alone a performance ute. The brake pedal modulation feels more consistent. The engine feels way more polished. So no longer do you have that clattery 2-litre diesel kind of rattling through the cabin at idle speed. Instead, it's a really smooth and really seamless day-to-day proposition. In fact, the most noticeable trait inside the cabin now at day-to-day speeds is those BF Goodrich tyres. And they're not noisy, but they're way more noticeable because you don't have all the chaos of everything else that was happening inside the cabin beforehand. In terms of the ride and handling of the Ranger Raptor, I reckon the primary ride is a lot better. So you still get a little bit of that tremoring that afflicts all dual cab utes, but there's far less of it than before, and it's in a different universe to pretty much every other dual cab ute on the scene. That's because of the Watts Link rear end, but also because of those live dampers, which, unlike the passive dampers in the predecessor, they can make lots of minute changes on the fly. So when you do nail this from a standstill, it's no longer squatting in the rear, it feels more controlled. And all the way through the stroke, it just feels nice and polished. There's no big thudding or crashing moments. And we're going to get to the off-road stuff, but on-road, it just feels like more of a complete package.
The new twin-turbo V6 petrol engine offers effective and tractable power across the dial, with the option of 2-wheel drive and full-time 4-wheel drive applications on road. The engine is a huge step up in refinement, but also feels well matched to the Raptor's updated underpinnings.
In regular conveyance, this is an engine that offers loads of in-gear torque. The 10-speed auto is always awake, it's always alert and in tune with what you're trying to do. And of course, pick the right mode. I'll switch it to Baja mode. This is just the exhaust, not the drivetrain. You got a really nice raucous exhaust note. That's a combination of the exhaust itself, and because it's so far from the cabin, there is a little bit of synthesized noise inside the cabin. I've been inside and outside the cab of the Ranger Raptor while it's doing its things today, and it sounds fantastic. I really don't think the video is going to do it justice, but it makes a really nice sound. And finally, I think you have an engine that's befitting of the Raptor's underbody performance. The only other real unknown with the Ranger Raptor is that of real-world fuel use. And today is very much a taste test. We're spending about 45 minutes inside the car on the road, and then we're doing all the off-road stuff as well. But at the moment, the current trip computer we're on says we've been driving for 30 minutes and the average fuel consumption figure is 12.1 litres per 100k. So it's not a million miles away from the claim. And the other thing worth noting, we drove the entire Everest range yesterday and it was about the same with that 3-litre turbo diesel V6. So naturally you're not quite going to get the long distance amenity in this as you would in the diesel. So for that reason, it might not be as suitable as
other Ranger variants for a Simpson desert trip for instance, you'd have to load up the tray itself with jerry cans. But I think for 95% of people and what they're doing, the V6 petrol is actually a really nice fit, and it's going to be a very no-fuss proposition. I think what you get in terms of the performance benefits more than outweighs any potential inconveniences.
In short, the Raptor feels like a tied down, more refined and stable proposition on the road, while also imparting more feeling and feedback than before. It's an impressive package and one that backs up its wares off-road as well.
Okay, so this is the ultimate test for the Ranger Raptor. We've got a circa 2-minute off-road course. It's mine. I get a full lap of it. I have a few laps of it. Let's go, jumps and everything. This is the first bit. Everything is switched off. We're in Baja mode. Here's a jump. Easy as you like. Big braking moment. Now, the big thing with this, as my buddy next to me has just been explaining, is that of patience. But work to the strengths of the Raptor, and it is a pure joy on this stuff. The way that it soaks up the big bumps, and also the engine performance. The anti-lag means you can have big off-throttle moments, lift off for 2 or 3 seconds, and then come back straight back on boost. So you're not having that traditional big twin turbo V6 lag. But what's really just amazing about the Raptor is its composure. 3rd gear, 4th gear corners, absolutely flat out. Big lift off oversteer moments like we're going through at the moment. And it is standing up to all the punishment. It feels flat, it feels balanced, it feels poised, and it's totally soaking up all these undulations that's sort of going on underneath us. This is absolutely next level in terms of engineering. It's next level in terms of this segment. And I think we're really seeing the advent of the Super Ute. Nothing else in market can do this. They can't even come close.
The final piece of the dynamic jigsaw is how the Ranger Raptor performs in low-speed off-roading. It's more good news there as well.
Okay, so naturally there is so much emphasis on the high-speed control of the Ranger Raptor, what it's like through moguls, dunes, everything else. But one of the lesser known components is how it handles itself off-road. For me, the instant word that comes to mind is that of control. We've just navigated a series of really low speed but undulating surfaces, and there's relatively no head toss inside the cabin. You're really well isolated from what's going on underneath you. And with all the technology on board, it's really streamlining the entire driving process. So there is the equivalent of a off-road, low-speed cruise control system. I've just selected the rock mode in the different driving suite, so that dulls the throttle response. And just the inherent character traits of the car as well. The same great feeling steering off-road isn't giving me any huge deflections in terms of kickback or anything else. It's still light enough too that it's easy to navigate tight little situations, but it still imparts enough feeling. So we are now at the bottom of a pretty gnarly little climb. It's been raining a lot here in southeast Queensland, and straight away the throttle response from the twin turbo V6 is really linear and predictable. I haven't got the diffs locked, it's really greasy underneath, and I was just able to perfectly modulate the throttle response to climb out of that. The tyres are plugged. Few cars have been up that same climb, and even then this didn't feel like it was going to get squirrely or start going backwards. So yeah, a really interesting little insight into how the Raptor performs in low speed driving. It's not the immediate thing you think of with this car's off-road potential, but it certainly isn't out of its depth.
In short, the Ranger Raptor is one of the most well-rounded and carefully executed ride and handling packages that we've experienced in recent memory. It is genuinely impressive across a range of conditions and reflects positively on the work of Ford Australia's engineering department responsible for the final product. The Raptor is backed by the same 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty as other Ranger products, together with the option of cap price servicing.
Having driven the Ranger Raptor in every conceivable condition today, on-road, off-road, low speed, high speed, you have to come away convinced that this really does mark the advent of the super ute. It's tangible progress in every performance metric, and as well as that, it now has the interior, the safety, and the technology really befitting of a Ford flagship. This is a really fantastic ute, and it has all the makings of an overnight classic. More than anything, as an enthusiast, I'm just glad that it exists.